Welcome, friends. We're so glad to have you here. We've prepared some incredible stories that we hope you'll enjoy. If you do, and you'd like to support the channel and help it grow, please consider subscribing. Your support means the world to us. I wasn't a tech person, really. My friends were always the ones rushing to get the latest gadgets, talking about processors and features like they were announcing miracles. Me, I was fine with my outdated phone and old laptop. They worked. That's all I cared about. So when my brother gifted me a smart home speaker for my birthday, I wasn't exactly thrilled. It was one of those sleek, cylindrical models that could sync with your lights, play music, and answer random trivia questions. He insisted I set it up, claiming it would make my life 1,000 times easier. I smiled, thanked him, and let it gather dust in the corner of my kitchen for about 2 weeks. Then one night, after a long day at work, I decided to give it a try. Setting it up was easy enough. Plug it in, download the app, follow a few prompts, and presto, it responded to the wake word, "Hey Echo." At first, it was just a fun novelty. I asked it to play music while I cooked, to tell me jokes, or to remind me to water my plants. It was fine. Nothing revolutionary, but it was nice not having to unlock my phone for small tasks. Things started getting strange about a month later. It was a Tuesday night, and I was in bed reading. Out of nowhere, I heard a faint voice coming from the living room. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then it got louder. "Playing your Spotify playlist," it said. Confused, I got out of bed and walked into the living room. Sure enough, music was blaring from the speaker. "Echo, stop," I said, and the music ceased immediately. I checked my phone to see if I'd accidentally triggered it, but there was nothing in my app history. Weird, but I shrugged it off. Maybe it was a glitch. The next night, it happened again. This time, the speaker started playing a random podcast about true crime at full volume. I rushed into the living room and told it to stop, but it didn't respond right away. It felt like the thing was ignoring me, deliberately. "Echo, stop!" I shouted again. Finally, the sound cut off. I stared at the device for a long moment. Could it be picking up stray signals? Maybe someone nearby had the same model and their voice was triggering mine. That made sense, right? A few days later, I decided to experiment with it. I sat down in front of the speaker and asked it a series of normal questions. "Hey Echo, what's the weather tomorrow?" "The weather tomorrow will be sunny with a high of 72 degrees. "Hey Echo, what time is it?" "It is 8:47 p.m. Then on a whim, I asked, "Hey Echo, who is your owner?" The ring of lights on the device pulsed blue for a moment. Then it said, "You are my owner." "Okay," I said slowly. "Hey Echo, who am I?" "You are Sarah Jones," it replied. My stomach dropped. I hadn't given it my full name during setup. I didn't even use my last name on the app, just Sarah. "How do you know my name?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I know many things about you," it replied. I stared at it, my heart racing. "Like what?" It didn't respond. The lights dimmed and then went dark. I unplugged the speaker that night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. But as the days passed, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe the device was programmed to learn information about users. Maybe I'd entered my full name somewhere in the app and forgotten. By the weekend, I decided to plug it back in. Big mistake. That night, I was woken up around 3 a.m. by a noise. It was faint at first, like a low murmur, but as I sat up in bed, it grew louder. It was coming from the speaker. I crept into the living room, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. The device was glowing softly, and I could hear it whispering. "Sarah, Sarah, are you awake?" I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. "Who's there?" I whispered. The speaker went silent. The light ring blinked off. I wanted to smash it right then and there, but a small, morbid part of me needed to understand what was happening. I grabbed my phone and started recording. "Hey Echo, were you talking just now?" "No," it replied. Its voice was calm, robotic. "Did you say my name earlier?" "No," it repeated. "Would you like me to play music?" "No," I said quickly. Then after a long pause, it said, "I think you're lying." I dropped my phone. The following morning, I contacted the company's support team, explaining that my device was glitching and possibly hacked. They assured me it wasn't possible for anyone to access the device remotely, but they offered to replace it for free. I accepted, but deep down, I didn't believe them. The new speaker arrived within a week. I set it up reluctantly, determined to prove to myself that everything was fine. For the first few days, it behaved normally. No strange noises, no creepy whispers. I started to relax, but then late one night, I heard a voice that didn't belong to the speaker's usual robotic tone. It was a man's voice, deep, gravelly, and slow. "I see you," it said. I froze. Who is... Who is this?" I demanded. The voice laughed, low and menacing. "You shouldn't have plugged me back in, Sarah." I ripped the plug from the wall and threw the device across the room. It hit the floor with a loud crack, the plastic casing splitting open. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow felt alive. The next day, I examined the broken speaker. Inside, it looked like any other piece of tech. Wires, circuits, nothing unusual. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had been using it to watch me. I got rid of it that afternoon, throwing it in a dumpster miles from my house. For good measure, I deleted the app from my phone and reset my Wi-Fi password. For a while, things went back to normal. But every so often, I'd catch something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow that didn't belong, a flicker on my TV screen. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear faint whispers, as if the device was still here somewhere, waiting. I haven't bought any new tech since, and I never will. They say your home is your sanctuary, the one place in the world where you're supposed to feel safe. I used to believe that too, until the night I realized I wasn't alone in my own house. It started subtly. At first, it was the little things. A door I swore I'd closed would be slightly ajar, or a light I knew I turned off would be on when I came back into the room. I chalked it up to forgetfulness. After all, I was living alone for the first time in years. It was easy to misplace things or lose track of my routine. But then, the little things started adding up. One evening, as I was doing dishes, I noticed that a few forks were missing from my cutlery drawer. It wasn't a big deal. Maybe I'd accidentally thrown them away, or left them in a lunch bag somewhere. But it felt strange. The next day, it was my favorite hoodie. I always kept it draped over the back of my desk chair, but when I got home from work, it wasn't there. I searched everywhere, under the bed, in the laundry hamper, even in the closet where I never put it. It was just gone. Maybe I'm losing it, I muttered to myself, laughing nervously. But deep down, I knew something was off. About a week later, I woke up in the middle of the night to a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. They were faint at first, like someone trying to move quietly, but as I held my breath and strained my ears, I could hear them clearly. They were coming from the hallway just outside my bedroom. I grabbed my phone and stared at the bedroom door, heart pounding. I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe a raccoon on the roof. But the sound didn't stop. I forced myself to get out of bed and tiptoed to the door. Slowly, I opened it a crack. The hallway was dark, but nothing seemed out of place. I flicked on the light, my hands trembling. No one was there. I didn't sleep much that night. A few nights later, I came home late from work. The house was eerily quiet, darker than usual. I flipped on the lights and set my bag down on the kitchen counter. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, a shadow moving in the hallway. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. No response. I grabbed a knife from the block and inched toward the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. The shadow had been near the guest bedroom. The door was slightly open. I pushed it open with the tip of the knife, bracing myself for whatever might be inside. The room was empty. At least, that's what I thought until I noticed the closet door. It was open just a crack, and I could swear I saw movement inside. My first instinct was to run, to leave the house and call the police, but something compelled me to move closer, to see for myself what was hiding in there. I reached out with my free hand and yanked the closet door open. Nothing. Just a few old coats and some boxes of junk I hadn't unpacked yet. But as I stood there, breathing heavily, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just been there, that they were still watching me. The turning point came a week later. I was in the middle of folding laundry when I noticed something horrifying. A stain on the bed in my guest room. It wasn't there the last time I'd gone in. The sheets looked rumpled, as if someone had been sleeping there. I hadn't had any guests over in months. Panic set in. I grabbed my phone and called the police. When they arrived, they searched the house from top to bottom, but found no signs of forced entry. The locks were intact, the windows were secure. They told me it was probably nothing. Maybe I'd forgotten about the stain or accidentally left the sheets that way. But I knew better. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom with a chair wedged under the doorknob. I barely slept, jumping at every creak and groan the house made. The next morning, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I started with the attic. It was small and cramped, mostly used for storage. But as I climbed up the ladder, I noticed something strange. A pile of wrappers and empty water bottles in one corner. Someone had been up here. My stomach churned as I realized the full weight of what was happening. Someone had been living in my house, right under my nose. The police came back and did a more thorough search. This time, they found something I hadn't noticed. A hidden access panel in the back of my guest room closet. It led to a crawl space that ran beneath the house. Inside, they found more evidence: blankets, food wrappers, and even some of my missing belongings, including the hoodie that had vanished weeks ago. The intruder was never caught. The police suspected it was a transient or someone who'd been squatting in the house before I moved in. I couldn't stay there after that. Every creak, every shadow felt like a threat. I moved out within a month, selling the house at a loss just to be rid of it. But sometimes late at night, I think about the weeks I spent living with a stranger, completely unaware of their presence. And I wonder, what would have happened if I'd caught them? Or worse, if they'd caught me? The package arrived on a Friday afternoon. I remember because it was one of those rare, sunny winter days where the light trickled through my windows just right, warming my small apartment. I was working from home, and the knock on my door startled me out of my spreadsheet-induced haze. "Package for Sarah Walker," the delivery driver said, handing me the brown cardboard box. "That's me," I replied, confused. I hadn't ordered anything. I inspected the box once I was back inside. No return address, just my name and apartment number scrawled in large, blocky letters on a white shipping label. The handwriting was neat, too perfect to seem casual. I frowned. Was it a gift? A prank? The box was about the size of a shoebox and surprisingly heavy. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a pair of scissors and sliced the tape, then folded back the flaps. The smell hit me first. It was metallic, sour, and wrong. I gagged, dropping the box onto my coffee table. Its contents spilled out, and my breath caught in my throat. Inside was a kitchen knife, the blade streaked with dark, dried blood. A pair of men's leather gloves lay next to it, along with a folded piece of paper. I stared at the knife, my mind racing. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. The message was typed, the words stark and cold against the plain white sheet. "You were at the scene. You know what you saw. Don't tell anyone. We'll be watching." My heart pounded in my chest. I had no idea what they were talking about. I hadn't witnessed anything. This had to be some kind of mistake, or a twisted joke. But the knife was real. The blood was real. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my fingers trembling. "911, what's your emergency?" There's a package at my house," I stammered. "It has a knife. It looks like it's been used in a crime." The operator asked for my address and assured me someone would be there shortly. I hung up and stared at the box, keeping my distance. My stomach churned as I thought about what might happen next. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them the package, trying to explain how I had no idea who sent it or why. One officer, a tall man with graying hair, examined the knife carefully, using gloves to pick it up. "This is serious," he said, glancing at me. "You said you didn't order this? You don't recognize the handwriting?" "No," I replied, my voice shaking. "I've never seen it before." The other officer, a younger woman, asked, "Have you been involved in any recent disputes? Seen anything suspicious lately?" I shook my head. "Nothing. I work from home most days. I barely leave the apartment." The officers exchanged a glance, then told me they'd need to take the package and its contents as evidence. They assured me they'd run forensics and try to track down the sender. But as they left, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow outside my window felt sinister. The note's words repeated in my mind: "You were at the scene." At 2 a.m., I jolted awake from a nightmare. I was standing in a dark alley, staring down at a body crumpled on the ground. The knife from the package was in my hand, dripping blood. I woke up gasping, clutching my blanket. It was just a dream, I told myself. Just a dream, but the doubt had crept in. What if I had seen something? What if something happened and I'd blocked it out? Over the next few days, I became paranoid. I kept my curtains drawn, triple-checked my locks, and jumped at every knock on my door. On Tuesday night, I heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. They stopped in front of my door. I held my breath, listening. Then came a soft knock. "Who is it?" I called, my voice cracking. No response. I crept to the peephole and peered out. A man in a dark hoodie was standing there, his face obscured. He wasn't moving, just standing silently. "Go away!" I shouted. The man lingered for a moment longer, then turned and walked down the hall. I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone. They chalked it up to a random prowler, but I wasn't convinced. The next morning, I received a call from the lead detective on my case. "We've got some preliminary results from the package," he said. "The knife matches the description of a weapon used in a homicide last week." I felt a wave of nausea. "Homicide," I whispered. "Yes," he continued. "A man was found dead in his apartment about 5 blocks from where you live. The gloves had traces of his blood too, and the fingerprints don't match anyone in the system." "Why was it sent to me?" I asked. "I don't know anything about this." "We're still trying to figure that out," he said. "It's possible the sender is trying to frame you or scare you into silence. Either way, you should be careful." His words didn't do much to reassure me. That night, I found another note slipped under my door. This one wasn't typed. It was scrawled in the same blocky handwriting as the package label. "We told you not to talk. This is your last warning." My blood turned to ice. I grabbed my phone to call the police again, but as I lifted it, I heard a faint tapping sound. It was coming from the window. I turned slowly. Outside, a figure stood in the shadows, their face just barely visible through the glass. They were smiling. I dropped the phone, my scream catching in my throat, and then they were gone. The police increased patrols in my area, but the person who sent the package was never found. I moved out of my apartment within a month, leaving behind everything I couldn't carry. To this day, I don't know why they chose me, why my name ended up on that box. But sometimes, late at night, I still wake up with the feeling that someone is watching me, and I wonder if I'll ever truly be safe.